Hi, this is Billy from Ever Expanding Life. Today we're going to look at the beginning of our conversion of our 98 Dodge Ram van to a camper van. So far we've flipped the windows and we've built the floor and the walls and covered the wheel wells. Today we're going to show you how we did it. If you enjoy this video, please make sure you drop a like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to check us out at our website, everexpandinglife.com. Working undercover today. Mother Nature's not exactly cooperating, but we're relentless, so we're going to do it anyway. So far we've gutted most of it, and we've been upgrading a little bit at a time, taking her out on test runs. We've already installed a bed frame. We've been using that. It's been working nicely. We've flipped the windows upside down so that the vents are at the top. Before, the vents were at the bottom and they were at the height of the mattress, so we couldn't even really open the windows and enjoy it. So we flipped it so they're at the top, and we've permanently covered over the bottom portion now of the window with some material that's black on the outside and blocks the light. And we've already framed out the center wall, like we're going to do the same thing to the back too, and put in our first panel so that all you have is the sliding portion of the window, and the rest of the window has become wall. So that gives us more living space, and we're not so exposed to the outside, so it's nice. And that section there is already double insulated with R13 insulation. First layer of R13 in place in the central section. We'll pin that in place with the framework for the wall, and then put a second layer of R13 inside the frame. And here we have the framing for the center section for the wall. You see it already has some insulation on it. That's because this will be our second installation of the center wall. I took it out to solve two issues. For one, the windows were leaking, causing some moisture to get into the wall. Couldn't have that, so we took it out to fix that. And also, I decided after putting the wall in that I preferred to have the floor underneath the wall. So we put the floor in and then actually shortened the height of the bottom section of the wall, so now the floor will go under the wall. Central wall frame is all back in place and double insulated with R13. You'll notice that the edge there does not have its second layer of insulation in it. That's because I'm going to be making separate access panels there to get to all these wires if I need to get to them after the fact. And now the central wall panel is back in. So before we do the other two walls or start the kitchenette, our next step is we're going to put some insulation down on the floor, and we're going to put some of the flooring down on top of it, establish an underflooring before we finish that up. We've cut strips of floorboard to go in the grooves in the floor to stop the floor from buckling, from having any little dents or divots. Now when we put down the insulation and the floorboard, it should stay pretty smooth. We've sealed up the floor with some Rust-Oleum, some pieces of flashing over the various holes where the bolts were going through for the seats and things like that. Sealed everything down with some silicone. Now everything should be watertight and nice and flat and ready for the flooring. The strips of floorboard that we put in here are simply for the purpose of stopping the insulation and the floorboard from sagging down into the grooves. There's nothing structural really about them, so I have no real need to bolt them in place or anything like that. I just need them to not move while I'm installing the insulation layer. So we've secured them with a little duct tape. A little crude, but it'll work. We've cut the first piece of floor insulation to size. We're using 3/4 inch extruded polystyrene insulation board. Floor insulation in and sealed. Floorboards cut to shape and in position. We've picked up a rubber horse stall mat. We're going to trim this and use this for the flooring in the center section. Okay, we got the stall mat cut to size and in place. We have a layer of insulation now on one of the wheel wells. Second wheel well insulated. And now we have framed the wheel wells. We've added a second layer of insulation to the wheel wells using R13 fiberglass insulation. And now we've covered the wheel wells with flooring. What do you think, Pepe? Pepe approves. Alright, so now we've extended the floor in the back so that it will go under the back walls beside the back doors. And we've started insulating the back beam. I'm stuffing these with fiberglass insulation here because I've got wires that run inside them. So I want to be able to get in there if I need to. However, this beam that runs along the center wall on the driver's side doesn't have any wires running through it and no real great access points to stuff it with fiberglass. So instead, we're going to take advantage of these little holes that are in it. There's a couple here. And then there's a bit of a gap right here. And we're going to add some of this Great Stuff spray foam. But we've chosen to use the window and doors version, not the original, because this stuff stays soft and flexible to allow for expansion and contraction. And with it being the van, I wanted to be able to have that stuff be able to be a little bit flexible in the wall and not crack the first time I go over a bump or something. This stuff is a few cents more expensive, but I think it'd be worth it in the long run. I've covered the floor and the wheel well around it. This way I can protect the surfaces a little bit. The recommendation is to fill your spaces about 50% full because this stuff expands like crazy. Also wear some gloves. It's not easy to get off your hands. Remember to shake your can for at least 60 seconds before you use it. And also remember that this is a one-time use can, because once you stop using it, it's going to harden right up and you're not going to be able to use anything else that you didn't use. I have filled the beam way more than I need to, and it will continue to expand for about 24 hours. But it's not really a big deal that I've overfilled it, because it will just continue to expand out. It's not going to do anything to the metal beam except for make sure that it fills it completely. And then anything extra that foams out, I can just trim off with a razor blade or a knife. It'll cut right off real easily. It's just foam. But now this beam that I had no other way to get to will be thoroughly filled and insulated. It's actually a really quick and easy job. Of course, you do have to wait for it to finish expanding and everything before you can seal it up. We'll be putting a wall in front of it, just like we did over here. While that's curing, we can get back to these beams over here. And I'm going to stuff these more with the fiberglass. I don't want to use the Great Stuff foam in this one because I don't want it to harden around my wires. Similarly over here in this beam, got wires running through these things. So we're going to stuff that with fiberglass the best we can so that we can still get into it if we need to. Okay, so now we've compressed the fiberglass in the beams. Okay, it's the next day and the spray foam has been sitting. Now it's time to clean it up a bit. Cuts really easy. So the foam cleaned up pretty well. And the nice part about this Great Stuff windows and door version is that even once it's hardened, it stays soft and flexible. So we're working towards being able to frame out, insulate, and put wallboard up in the back section of the van. But before I can frame out and close up the passenger side here, I want to install a 110 electrical outlet to the outside of the van It's going to be right about here. So I have to put that in first. It's going to come through right about here. To do this job, I'm going to use a secondary installation electrical box. It has these little tabs that will grab onto the wall and hold it in place. We have our plug. We have an outside cover. Going to use some 14-2 wire. Also, because I want to have the option of removing the connective wire, because my main power is going to be over here behind the driver's seat, and I don't really want to have to run the 110 wire all the way up through the ceiling and around. So I'm going to put a disconnectable cable that can run under the bed and then around. So I'm going to have the electrical box go to a male 110 plug, and then I can direct wire in an extension cord to the main power and have it feed over with its female end. And then if I need to take the bed out to carry larger items or something like that, I can just disconnect the cable, and then it won't be in the way of loading. And with that, she's all done. We'll hide that wire in the wall with an access panel, and then when we want it hooked up, we'll run it to an internal extension cord. I have one hooked up to the electric right now inside the van. I'm going to run it to it temporarily, see how it works. Alright, let's go outside and test it out. There she is on the side of the van, and it works. Now that I've got all the loose ends tied up in the walls, we're getting ready to start on the framing of the back walls. The first thing I'm going to do here is figure out exactly where the bed frame is going to fall. That way I know where to put the internal supports in the wall, and also I know how to plan for the access panels, so I can make sure that I can get in around the frame without having to take the bed frame out every single time I want to get in the wall. So I'm going to mark exactly where it's going to fall, making sure that I level it to compensate for the fact that the rear end of the van is jacked up. And then after I get it all leveled and marked, then I'll be able to plan the footprint of the wall, figure out exactly the height of the bottom section, where I want the internal supports. And just like the central wall, I'm going to build this wall in 3 sections. We'll build a bottom section that fits nice and tight to the floor and goes up an estimated height. Then we'll build a top section that frames in the windows and is nice and tight to the top. Then, with the remaining gap, I'll make a connection section that will perfectly fit in between the two and seal in the frame of the wall. after I have the frame basically constructed, then we'll insulate behind it and then put the frame in. As I'm building this, I'm taking into consideration the back wall because I don't exactly have a corner post that I can mount to. So I'm going to build these sections more L-shaped so that I can brace into the center beam here, I can brace into the back wall beam, and then brace the two walls into each other. And I'll do that again in 3 sections. So I'll build the bottom section so it can sit in here. Then I'll build the top section so it fits. And then I'll pin them in with the center section. Alright, so with that, let's get started. So here we have the bottom portion of the driver's side rear framing in position. Next we need to create the upper portion, followed by the middle portion. The framing for the driver's side rear end of the van is now all constructed. It's all made of 1x2s. Notice that I've framed out tightly around the wheel wells. This thick plate above the wheel well is an area to which I can mount the bed frame. I've reinforced the middle here greatly for support so that I don't kick out the wall while I'm laying in bed. It's framed out around the top piece here of the window so that we still get light out of that portion of the window. I've boxed it in so I can have a removable panel around the antenna right there. That leads to the antenna. I've had to box out around the taillight. I've made it so I'll be able to put a removable panel by the wiring there, by the wiring at the top. And I'll be covering it all with the flooring board so it'll be like the middle section like that. None of it is secured in place at this moment. Next step is to take it all back out and insulate behind it. Then I can put it back in place and permanently mount it. Okay, the first layer of insulation is all installed. We used R19 this time, and the frame is now securely fastened in place. So the next step is the second layer of insulation, which will be stapled to the frame. And then applying the floorboarding to the wall. However, before we get started on that, we need to do the same thing over here on this wall. And there we have it. Passenger side wall done. Next step is to add the second layer of insulation. So now we have the second layer of R19 insulation installed, everywhere except for where there will be access panels. For those places we'll cut a piece of insulation to fit, which will go underneath each access panel. We've left place for access panels around where the antennas come through the wall. We're going to have access panels all along the back wall so we can get to all that wiring. Same thing on this side. In addition, where the electric is here, we've left room for two access panels, one to feed the wire through and a place to plug it in. So the next step is to install the 1/4-inch paneling on the wall. Once again, we'll be using the floorboarding that we used on the other wall and on the wheel wells and the floor. The driver's side rear wall is in. And I've got the bottom of the passenger side rear wall in. However, before we go ahead and tackle the top, we're going to take this second horse stall mat and cut it to size for the back. Alright, the rear horse stall mat is cut to size. We'll clean that up later when we're closer to a permanent installation. We're still going to have to take those back out when we finish up the subfloor there. So now it's time to get back to the wall. Passenger side wall is now in. We still need to make all of the access panels and to finish the walls. We'll come back to that later. So we still have a lot to do in our van conversion, but so far we've already accomplished a lot. We've got our windows flipped upside down, we've got our floor in, and we've got our basic walls in. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you have, please drop a like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to check us out at our website, everexpandinglife.com. And as always, may you be blessed with an ever-expanding life.